Hello, I'm Riley Wilson, and welcome to the Band of One podcast. This podcast is designed for anyone that would like to have a solo or small group career to get better at what they do and to make more money and to enjoy the process. I've got over 50 years of performing live and will share not only my tips, but the tips of other hardworking professionals, what they've learned worked well for them in their neck of the woods. If you like what we do, like, share, and subscribe, and we'll do our very best to give you cutting-edge information you can use right away. Let's get busy. Once again, my guest today is the multi-talented and internationally famous Mike Masse. Mike, welcome.
Hello.
This is a lot of fun. I got a couple of questions. One of the things that you mentioned early on was playing a 12-string guitar tuned down half a step, right? Mm-hmm. And it almost feels like the Mac Davis line from his song must be one heck of a man, because playing a 12-string guitar for any length of time is tough, whether it's tuned down a half step or not. And you did that on the 12-string guitar for how long?
Oh boy. Probably, I don't know. I would say that's a good question. At least 5 years. I'm not even sure. Where it was basically my only guitar. It was like my primary guitar.
And how long are these gigs you're playing? An hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours?
My sets were usually 3 hours. Yeah. Like 7 to 10, maybe a short break in the middle, something like that. Yeah.
So in other words, you have a gorilla's grip for a left hand.
Well, I mean, I don't have the calluses I used to. I still have calluses, but they're not quite what they used to be. But like it definitely takes a certain level of strength to do that. And I would always gravitate towards open chords like any sane guitarist, and try to limit the bar chords, because that's when you get into trouble. Your hand gets too tired too quickly. And so that's when the capo also comes into play, where if you get good with the capo, you can avoid bar chords much easier.
I love what James Taylor was asking about that one time. A guitar player, they said, "Do you use a capo?" And he said, "Shamelessly."
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the big trick in Nashville. Most of the acoustic guitar songs that you hear, something simple like "Why Not Be" by Naomi and Winona Judd, that's Don Potter playing a G chord, and the guitar is capoed at third position. That's how that sounds, right? Yeah, exactly. And of course, all of us that have been doing this for any length of time understand all those kinds of things. Yeah. Before we get to guitars and equipment, I want to talk about what happened once you got onto YouTube, because this is kind of like lighting a Roman candle, because I don't know if you had any idea how big this was going to get, did you? I didn't think I was going to become a professional musician because of my YouTube channel. I didn't realize that was even a possibility. So yeah, I guess I wasn't prepared for, that eventuality. But I did feel like, as I've gotten some, as we talked about previously on in the previous episode, we talked about how my sister had encouraged me to start a YouTube channel. So just with that thought in mind, I was like, well, I felt like there was two things that people might be drawn to my YouTube channel. One was, I thought people might like my voice. At least some people might like my voice. I thought, I'm going to throw my voice out there and playing these songs. And I kind of felt like, I had like, I don't know. It's an old reference, but like I think there's a little bit of Rich Little in me as a singer, where I'm like making impersonations, but not with like, I call them emulations more than impersonations, where I try to recreate the performance as it came out of that individual, like technically, and therefore recapturing much of the emotional weight assigned to the sounds that they made. And so, in other words, it's a complete manipulation. No, just kidding. It's basically like, as a singer, that, like in Song Blue, when Neil Diamond says, singing with a cry in your voice, if you throw in a little vocal crack at the right time and in the right word and the right part of the phrase, it's going to hit harder, because they're going to be like, oh, he it sounds like he's about to cry, it just hits harder, right? It gives people chills. And so like those little techniques of just, vocal, and I mean, you're kind of manipulating your voice, but hopefully not the audience. But it's like those little things, that was what I was listening for as a singer when I was learning how to sing. I would listen to what people were doing and how they were doing it, and try to find it in my own voice. I'm like, how did they make that sound can I do that? You know, and there's still a couple sounds that elude me. Like, I'm not gonna lie. But for the most part, like vocally, I'm like, okay, I know how to do that. I know how to do that. And I remember that was part of my training. Like, not only did I learn how to play guitar from playing Beatles songs and piano to a certain extent, I kind of learned how to sing by listening to the Beatles. And what I would do is, this was back in the day, like when the Beatles catalog was first being released on compact disc. I was kind of rediscovering the albums kind of through that, because I actually worked in the CD store. And to say you worked in a CD store sounds kind of like, I mean, it sounds old fashioned now, but at the time it was like, a what store? Like, you know, it was like one of the first stores in town, definitely, that only sold CDs. They didn't sell any records or tapes. And so I worked there. And so like I got the Beatles catalog, like as they came out on CD, I was picking them up, spending all my paychecks on music. And
Sure.
so I take them home, and I had like a little boombox CD player. I plug in my headphones, and I was just listening. And like the way that some of the Beatles recordings are isolated, you know, like the vocals are on this side and the music's on this side, like kind of weird panning that we don't think of today. And so like if you're listening to something like If I Needed Someone, or I Want to Tell You, like one of the old, you know, Beatles with like they're all singing in harmony, you could just kind of hear the voices and nothing else. And the thing that impressed me was like just listening to Paul, because Paul was kind of my goal. I'm like, I love that sound. Just I got a feel for the energy it required, you know, because you feel it in their bodies. You know, the breaths are taken, and then they're just, I'm just like, oh my god, I'm like, these dudes are working. You know, they're working this. This is not just coming out easy. Like these guys are. This is exercise. You know, and so like that was kind of an awakening to me. And I remember also like one time listening to, and we're just driving in town in Boulder when I was in high school, and With or Without You came on the radio by U2, and I'd already heard it. You know, it was a new song, but I'd already heard it dozens of times at that point. And that middle section happens where he just opens up and he goes for that high A, and he just goes, ah, you know, and he just like opens up, and then the Edge answers in harmony below him, and it's just, and I was just like, oh my gosh, you know, I was just like, I will never be able to make that sound. Like, how does he do that? He just opened up, and just this thing came out, you know, like this huge thing, and it was beautiful and perfect, but it was massive. And like, again, that was like an insight, like that's the energy it requires. I'm like, okay. And so like I got that in my head, and then I got, I got the courage to try to experiment and make some of those sounds, you know, in the privacy of my bedroom, in my basement, you know, cranking up the stereo, singing along, till I'm like, okay, I can do that. Can I control it? Well, I'm getting there. Like I got to be able to control it, you know. And so it was just kind of like training myself based on what I was hearing in rock music. And so it was like listening with intention, you know, and that helped me a lot. And then obviously taking that raw like understanding, and then doing voice lessons in college that kind of built upon that, and like gave me some techniques and just kind of showed me, you know, vowel modulations. I know I keep talking about vowel modulations, but I can't oversell the importance of vowel modulations if you're trying to sing at the limits of your range. It's just like you have to modulate the vowels, or it's just like it gets ugly, you know. And so, but like with rock music, some of these guys can sing so freaking high, they don't have to modulate the vowels. They just sing them. You know, it's just like, you know, like Lou Graham or Steve Perry or whatever. Sometimes they're just like, wow, you know, they're just letting it go. And like, you know, so, I mean, some of it is anatomy, and you can't, you know, you have what you have, you know, vocal cord wise. But yeah, it's been fun to kind of try to make the most of what I was given. And I still feel like I'm getting better vocally. I don't feel like I've completely peaked. I know I'm like age wise, probably about to, you know, just like, just the reality of it. But like, I still feel like there's nuance in my voice now that I didn't have before, and control, and just, yeah. So it's like, it's really fun. I just like, I like getting out there and singing. I don't like, you know, I don't like every song to be a huge vocal challenge, because it's like, I don't feel like I can sit back and express myself as much musically if I'm worried about what's going to happen technically. And so like, you know, there's a few songs on my set list that people expect me to do, and they're kind of like the firework moments where like, ooh, he just showed off a little bit vocally, you know, but I can't build a whole set that way. It's too exhausting for anybody, especially since my sets are like almost 3 hours long. But so you know, I'll get into some ballads that are lower in my range, but then I think back to that compliment I got from Ken's brother, you know, Mike, that's one of the best lower ranges I've ever heard. I'm just like, it's okay. People will enjoy the contrast. You don't have to sing high all the time, you know, just like give them a little bit of variety. And, you know, and that was one of the compliments I get from my shows, is that people say that you have a lot of variety in your shows. Like it doesn't all sound the same, because I'm doing so many different artists, and I'm hitting different colors in my voice. And so it's not like, you know, like where you're seeing a tribute act where it's a bunch of all of the same band where it all kind of sounds the same, you know? So anyway.
So along those lines,
It sounds like maybe when you were in high school, you were maybe like a second tenor, even baritone. Were you able to, is that true? Or were you more like a second tenor even then and you just push the upper register? How did that work?
Well, I think I was always part of the first tenor section, even in high school, but
Okay.
they just didn't have quite as many expectations of tenors in high school in terms of singing in full voice. And then like when I got into college later, I was always still singing first tenor, and I was, I was going for it. And
Okay.
and
Okay.
yeah, but also trying to blend, that's like
Yeah.
part of the key. It's like you don't want to stick out.
Sure. So another question along those lines, when you mentioned earlier, and we'll get to Africa in a moment, but when you have songs like that, have you ever considered modulating or changing the key to make it a little bit easier for your voice? You mentioned playing with a capo, half step low.
Yeah.
Or do you just figure I'm
Well,
at first tenor, I'm going to put it in the key of the record and just do it? How does that work?
Well, so okay, as a cover artist, I feel like I should always try to do it in the original key, because like whoever wrote the song, like if it's a U2 song and they take it on the road and they lower it or whatever, it's their song, and they kind of give themselves license to sing it however they want. But as a cover artist, I feel like the expectation is like, well, it's not your song, but you didn't write it, but can you do it as well as it was originally done? And so part of doing it as well as it was originally done is doing it in the original key. And so that has always been the goal. I will like not confess, but I will announce. No, that like lately when I've been doing Africa, it's capoed on the second fret, so I'll just bring it. I'll just move it down to the first fret, and it just makes it so it's not like dangerous, like where like I don't need the most anticipated song on my request list to be a train wreck. You know what I mean? And so like, and there are nights vocally where it's like it could be or it can be or has been, because I'm just like my voice is just too tired. It's just like I can't, like I'm only human. And so what I tell people is, if I had to sing Africa in isolation and it was the only thing I was singing, like I could do it in the original key, not a problem, and do it a couple times maybe. But like if I'm doing it in the context of a whole night of singing, it's like I gotta cut myself a little bit of break, and I just don't. And I just mostly like, first of all, like I'm aware that maybe 5% at most of the people in the audience would even notice. Okay. And if they notice, they're going to either like, the only way that they're even going to notice, like maybe if they have perfect pitch, but that's 1% or less than 1%. The other ways they would notice is like if they're a guitar player and they look visually like, oh, his capo's in a different place. Like that's a visual cue that we're in a different key, right? Or they do a cell phone recording and they're playing it, and then they right back to back they play the original, like, oh, that's in a different key. Like that's really the only way they're going to notice, right? Because it's only a half step. It's not like it's a huge difference, but like it is enough of a difference where I remember Jeff Hall, like one time we did it together and we did a half step lower, and afterwards, like he quoted to me from Monty Python the Holy Grail, because we're both like huge Monty Python fans, and it's the scene where where they're all trying to cross the bridge of death, and like one of the first guys gets by and he's like, all right, off you go. He goes, and then someone behind him goes, that's easy. And so after the show, after he sang Africa, Jeff just like, that's easy. Like just the contrast of like how much easier it was for just like he threw in a Python reference he knew I would get. But anyway, so yeah, so it definitely takes some of the pressure off, and it's still a hard enough song to sing that I don't think people feel cheated. Like, like it was a little bit easier. That's not cool. Like it still takes a lot, and most people probably still couldn't sing in a half step lower, like it's still a challenge. But, so that's kind of my take on that. And then like, okay, so because I'm a first tenor and because I have, maybe a higher than average voice, that's just my thing. Like the original key is my thing. I don't hold anybody else to that, and I don't fault anybody else for like changing it to the key that's comfortable for them, because I've had people like in all honesty, like listen to some like a recording or something, and they'll hear like something that I did that was higher, and to their ears, like I'm straining a little bit, and they're like, for God's sake, man, lower it. It's like give yourself an easier key to sing it. It's like so like I don't pull it off, to everyone's satisfaction historically, but like I get that that's a thing. It's just like we would rather hear you sing it comfortably than sing it like badly and in the but badly but authentically. It's just like we'll take less authentic but like same.
Yeah.
So like I totally get that.
I understand this perfectly. I worked with a band many years ago that we were going to play the song in the original key, come hell or high water, and we had as many hells as we did high waters. And a lot of those vocally were me because I realized I couldn't do that. So probably 20 years ago, I started to tune down a half step, and I play things in keys because my voice, I went from a first tenor the end of my sophomore year of high school to a first bass the 3 months later. And so I have to do stuff that work for me vocally. Let's talk about how the YouTube thing blew up to the point where you actually play international gigs. How did that work?
The formula was quantity plus quality over time. Like somebody asked me recently, I just posted like just on YouTube, like, I'd really like to hear how you made it, made it on YouTube or whatever, how you made a name for yourself on YouTube. Like, what was your secret? And I'm like, my snarky reply was, well, the key is start in 2008. It's just like, they're like, there's no substitute for being kind of an OG, because it's just over time, more people have had an opportunity to get exposed to my covers, And as a musician, I always encourage people who were, even if their goal is to be an original artist, I'm like, you got to start with some covers, man. You got to give people a reason to find you. And then once they find your covers, if they think you're good, maybe they'll get curious about your originals. But no one's gonna Google your originals because they don't know who you are. So it's like there's no shame in it, and it's like it's kind of fun, And then, people who do that, part of it is like, well, I'm gonna put my own spin on it. I'm gonna make this my own, and that's not a gift I have. Let's just put it that way. Rather than like poo-pooing what other people are trying to do, I'm just gonna say I don't have that gift of like, I'm gonna make it my own. Or maybe I have the gift, but I don't have the desire or the energy to do that. Like, and the most common way, like it was explained to me, I talked to a guy that worked for like Warner Brothers Music, I'm just like, how would I get a song, a cover, like on a soundtrack? Like I want to get, because people know me for covers. Maybe I can get in a movie soundtrack, He's like, well, the key there is to do a 180 cover. And a 180 cover is where you take a fast song and you make it slow, or you take a slow song and you make it fast. It's like, boom, like there's your formula. And so you were literally changing it up, and you're changing up primarily through like style, like the tempo, and you're turning something that was a rockin' song into a ballad, or whatever. And so it's like all haunting and creepy with a bunch of reverb or whatever, and so it gets in a movie trailer. And so I was like, that was the advice I was given. But I just don't do that. Like, it's not my mission, like my mission is I want people to get to hear the songs that they love live by artists who are bands who broke up a long time ago, or they can't afford their tickets, or they're no longer with us. And I want to give them an evening of that music, live songs that they haven't, that they associate, and like all these sense memories come pouring in when they hear the song from their childhood. And I give them a beautiful night of music and memories. And like, that's my job. If I'm changing every song, they're just not going to feel it the same way. They're going to be like, they're going to miss the vibe. They're going to miss the groove, whatever. And so like, my main goal is like, how do I maintain that vibe? How do I maintain that groove in the confines of one person? And that is the whole philosophy behind my arranging. My arranging is all about converting a band into a guitar. And now I've expanded it because I have a guitar synthesizer. So I have a little bit of a string pad effect that happens through MIDI, following my guitar chords in real time. I play percussion with my feet. I have a stomp pedal with my left foot. I have a tambourine under my right foot. And so I've gotten into a little bit of a one-man band thing. And maybe it looks a little silly to be playing with your feet, but like, it sounds amazing. Like, the only thing missing is a bass guitar. And so like, if I do a duo show with a bass guitar and a vocalist, we sound like a band. We do. Cause like there's adequate drums going on. There's low end from the kick. There's a bass guitar. There's a little bit of harmony. The tambourine's like the snare drum. You got a little bit of synthesizer pad filling in the sound. Like, come watch my live stream. You'll hear it in real time. You'll hear it in action on Saturday night, because I do it on the live streams. I've even gotten to the point where I'm playing percussion with my feet while I'm playing piano, which is crazy because I'm also holding the sustain pedal at the same time. So I like have my left foot. I have my left foot sideways. The heel of my foot is on the sustain pedal, and the toe of my foot is tapping the kick drum. And so it's like, it's crazy, but it's kind of fun. Like, just rather than just a piano cover, like, ooh, the beat just kicked in. It's just like, it's nice, And so I'm just like, I'm leveling up. I'm still leveling up as a musician. I did a lot of that during COVID because I was playing 5 times a week, live streaming constantly. And I, not just learning songs, but I leveled up as a singer, as a player. Definitely my footwork is like just light years ahead of what it was before COVID. So yeah, I mean, I'm just taking opportunities and challenges, and I'm trying to like come out of them as a better musician, so I have a better product.
Well, that's tremendous. So it sounds like because of YouTube, you weren't really caught off guard when COVID happened. Would that be safe to say?
Like I have all the respect in the world for like what musicians went through when COVID hit, because it was unkind to all of us. And I know that people did the best they could, and with whatever repertoire they had and whatever instrument they played. I mean, just doing online ensembles, whatever they could find, And so I was uniquely situated to survive that situation. And I counted my blessings every day. I had the forum, I had the venue, which is YouTube. I already had a following on YouTube. I had the tech. I'd done some live streams on, a site called Stage It. Not in a long time, but I knew the basic way to get like my system into synced with video and broadcast in fairly real time. Like I had a basic grasp of how to do that. But I upgraded some stuff along the way. And then I had the repertoire where I could play requests, and I could play shows that were completely different from each other every day of the week for days on end without repeating a song if I had to. And so like I kept it interesting, and I kept an audience, a regular audience, coming back day after day after day. And those are the people that come up to me after my shows now, and they say, "You got me through COVID." A lot of musicians have heard that from other people, because we all got our little groups through COVID, which is awesome. But I have my group that I got through COVID, and it's like I call it the Mike Masse Show family, because it was the Mike Masse Show, and it's all the regulars. And we would do fan shows where they would pay $100, and like 20 of them would join, and it would be like a private stream, and they'd each get a request, and I'd play one song for everybody that showed up, and it'd just be like, and they'd all be in the live chat, like they all became friends. They're kind of chatting with each other and just having a good time. We'd throw out trivia questions, have prizes, just I was just trying to make it fun and like a community, and so, and that like sustained me through COVID, and it's still kind of partially sustaining me now, like when I have periods when I don't have a lot of gigs, like because my calendar kind of ebbs and flows. I'm doing all my own booking, so like there's times where like, oh, I didn't get to fill that hole, but I guess I can do a live stream or whatever. And it's kind of nice for the old regulars to get to see me, and also the new people, like I've never seen Mike do a live stream. Whoa, cool, and honestly, the sound quality of the live streams is kind of a moving target a little bit, but like I've gotten to a point where it actually sounds good. Like if you took the video away and you just like clipped out a song that I performed well, like it would stand alone as a good audio production of that song. So it's like the production quality is like, yeah, I put a lot into that, and I've invested a lot into that. I have way too much money I've spent on computers and interfaces, and yeah, but it's all like kind of working together.
I understand that. Let's talk about gear for just a moment, because you mentioned Ovation guitars. I played Ovation guitars myself for over 40 years. And
yeah.
I've got a video with a black one very much like that, but it doesn't have my name on it. I have a question, and that is, on a lot of your videos, you've got a little black device near the tail pin. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, there's my Adamus one. This guy right here.
Yes, let's talk about that. What is that?
That is it's probably backwards to you right now. Sorry. It's a Roland GK3, and this is my MIDI pickup. And so I plug my guitar. My guitar just comes out of the normal hole, and then right here there's a MIDI cable, which is what do they call them? Hex cables or something like that?
Yeah, hex cable, exactly.
Yeah.
Looks probably like a Cat 5 or something like that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that plugs in right here to this little guy, and then when the guitar synthesizer is on, it powers this, and the little light lights up, and over here it connects to. This is the pickup part itself, where under each of the strings, it detects the note individually for each of the 6 strings, and it sends it as a MIDI signal to my guitar synthesizer, and thus I can play. It just tracks whatever I'm doing in real time, and so I've made my own pads by just combining pre-existing presets, like and kind of into stacking them or layering them in ways that kind of sounded nice to me. And so I have like a few pads that I just use throughout my gigs. And I used to use a lot more. I've kind of simplified it actually. But sometimes I would use like a fake sitar sound when I play like Norwegian wood or whatever. But I have like a nice mellotron sound I use like on Space Oddity. It sounds like, tape strings. And then I just have a normal string pad that I just kind of have as ambient, like that I trigger, with my right foot when it's not hitting the tambourine. I jump over here and hit it. And that is a string pad that just kind of, there's a lot of songs where it just really creates an atmosphere that just, yeah, it's just a big sound. And it's a sound that I've evolved over time. If you look back at my Pi gigs, it's kind of simpler. There's just my guitar. I wasn't doing any of this stuff, but I haven't had anybody say like, I wish you weren't doing so much. Like I haven't had anybody complain about the sound, like it's too busy or whatever. It's just like, I think they all kind of appreciate it. And I try to use the drums like not sparingly, but just like as appropriate. Like there's some songs where I'm not going to add drums if they didn't have drums or whatever, and or like there were some songs like, like You've Got to Hide Your Love Away where a tambourine comes in and I'll just hit the tambourine or whatever. So it's just kind of, it's just like, but it's like a coordination, like challenge. It's really, it's difficult. Like, and I'm trying to expand right now. Like there's a song I'm going to debut on Saturday that has a slightly more complicated drum beat rather than boom, but back and forth like this. It's boom, but boom, boom, but boom, but boom, boom,
Sure.
bat. Doing that with your feet while you're singing and playing guitar, crazy. I mean, just adding that little bump, but like it's crazy. So like that, I'm still practicing. I'm still leveling up. I'm still trying.
So let's address that for just a moment before we detour back to gear for just a split second. Practice.
Yeah.
You're doing that almost every day, are you not?
Practice?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like to when I'm home, like I travel, and so like I can't practice when I'm traveling, but I perform. But yeah, I practice. I try to practice every day. Like I have editing I'm doing as well. Like I have some content that I'm trying to release. Like I just recorded a show with the string quartet and like a concert. And so I'm trying to release songs from that. And so like I'm kind of working on that like for part of the day, practice part of the day. And I usually use practice as a way to ease into my day because when you're self-employed, sometimes, getting motivated in the morning, you have to kind of like get yourself up. And so usually I'll try to do things that I wanted to do anyway. I'll get them done and I'm not ready to face the world yet. So like either I'll exercise and or practice like first thing in the morning. So I'm like, okay, I got that done. I need to do it anyway. And it's like, and practicing is just like something I kind of enjoy. And so it doesn't feel like work quite as much. I can't always sing first thing in the morning, but like I can play and everything. And so, that's how I usually start my day is like just trying to get in a little bit of practice.
So I've got a question. Ovations have been often a difficult guitar to get a great sound out of. When you're doing your live streams and you're playing something on the Ovation, are you just running it direct? Are you miking it? Or are you doing both?
No. I'm picking up something to show you.
Okay.
It's in rough condition and the volume knob is taped so it doesn't move. But this is my secret sauce right now. And what it's doing, it's not doing what you might think it's doing. It's not just like effects. I'm using an impulse response.
Okay.
An impulse response basically is what you're doing is you're taking somebody took a really nice guitar and mic'd it with a really nice microphone. And then they created like a sonic signature for that combination that you can lay on top of another guitar that's happening in real time and make whatever that guitar is sound more like the guitar that was mic'd. And so that's what an impulse response is. And it started with reverb. People were doing it to recreate reverbs. It's like they would just sing a ping. They would send a ping, like a quick little through a device, and they would capture what happened. And then they'd scan it and they'd be like, okay, this is what we need to do to any sound to make it sound like that reverb. Like whatever happened here, this is what always needs to happen. It wasn't a perfect, solution, but it was kind of a clever idea. We were like imprinting the sound of something onto something else. And so while these pickups on these Ovation guitars are respectable and sound, good, there's something different about an impulse response. And I have had, like, as I traveled the country and played little theaters or, community art centers or venues or whatever, I had several engineers, because I don't travel with an engineer. I use whoever the house guy is. I had several engineers tell me, like, that's that's the best acoustic guitar sound I've ever heard. Like, I mean, they just like, it just, and it's just because I dialed it in. it's like it's a blend. It's not just the impulse. It's not just that. It's like maybe like a 55% blend or something,
Sure.
like a little bit more
Sure.
impulse than that. And so like maybe, you know, and so to the purists, you know, there's probably some people that are gagging right now. They're like, ah, you know, just like, you know, just give me a Martin and leave me alone. You know, so to the purists, the whole like, you know, digital guitar tone is just like, you know, blasphemy or whatever. But to a gigging musician with an acoustic guitar they're traveling with, you know, I'm using I've got a shallow body guitar with a feedback buster in it. You're not getting much acoustic sound out of this. You're just not, you know. And so you kind of make it up in other ways. And yeah, so that's part of my tone. And I use it on the live streams too. You'll hear it in the live streams.
Well, they always sound marvelous, and that's the reason I had to ask that question. Along those lines, are you a fan of any particular guitar strings? Because acoustic guitar is your bed.
Yeah. Whoa, let's see if I have I'll do a little product pitch here. I don't know how many people are gonna ever watch this on video, but this
more
is
more than you realize.
Okay. So these are what I use.
Okay. Elixirs. Yep.
Elixir, phosphor bronze, nano web, HD light. Light. And the HD light means it's kind of like medium on the high strings and light on the low strings. So it's a 13 to 53.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's because I'm not a lead player, so I don't need to do it. I really don't need to do any bending, and I like those higher strings to just kind of sing a little bit more.
Well, and also if you play fingerstyle, you need a little bit of resistance, particularly on those
exactly.
on the last three strings to keep from pushing too hard. So I get that. So when you're doing solo gigs now, if it's an in-town thing, are you dragging your own gear with you? Do you have like a little PA system and stuff like that?
Yeah, if I do a local private gig, like a wedding and I get those, you know, I do corporate stuff. I go up into the mountains because I'm just in Denver. So where there's weddings in the mountains, I go to sometimes. I have a Bose tower. Okay. Is it L2
yeah,
or something like that? Yeah. And then I got the original. I had actually a couple of the smaller mixers they originally had. And then I got the larger, like 8-channel one. And that's what I bring. It's not perfect. It's supposed to put it behind you kind of and use it as a monitor, but like I still get some feedback issues sometimes. It's not perfect, but it's fine for pretty much any local size stuff I'm doing. That's, you know, if it's a bigger event, they'll have their own sound. So I just plug into something else.
Sure.
And it's portable. So, I have a couple of the passive subs, so they're not too heavy. I had like an issue with a hernia like a few years back, and at the time my wife's like, we need to get you a lighter PA, because I was hauling around a couple of QSC K12s or whatever, and she's like, let's get you a lighter PA. So I got a couple of passive subs and I got the tower, just a little easier on the back. It's still several pieces to haul, but I just got myself a little cart that I'm using, which is nice. So that's, makes it easier.
Yeah, you have to. Those of us that have been doing this for a while, I've had to have a knee replacement and a hip replacement in the last 4 years, and so it's not fun. So the lighter the gear normally we can haul, the better, and I completely get that. That's. Let's talk about some of your videos that have caused quite a ruckus. You want to tell the Africa story, because I think this is really cool. I actually met Luke and the entire band of Toto. The whole band played July of '83. We were at MI, and my wife was able to be there with me. It was incredible. Bobby Kimbrell was the only one that wasn't there, but we got to hear the entire group. But I'd love for you to share the story about Africa and their reaction to that.
Yeah, so like in 2010, I posted a cover of Toto's Africa with Jeff Hall, and it was recorded on a patio outside one of the pie locations Friday afternoon, 4 o'clock or whatever. There was a few people there, like maybe like 4 or 5 tables on this patio, and including a couple of my neighbors over there. And my neighbors, we passed out the set list, and I didn't really tell Jeff. Like sometimes I would do that. I would just put a song on the request list that he didn't realize I'd done it. But like we had sung Africa like once before, maybe a few weeks or months earlier, and once before at the other pie location, and that was kind of like his first attempt at it. And so I threw it on the request list, and my neighbors actually circled it and brought it back. And I'm like, hey, you want to do Africa? And he's like, okay, like, let's see what happens. I'm like, yeah, let's give it a go. And so we did it. And, and at the time I thought, hey, that sounded pretty good. And I did what I usually would do is I went back and listened to the show afterwards, or not the whole show, but I would listen to like, I think that song was pretty good, or that song, I'd listen to a couple of highlights and say like, is that worth posting or whatever? And then I went back and I listened to Africa, and I was like, I think this is probably worth posting, but
I know Jeff doesn't know it as well as he would like, so he might want another crack at it when he's more familiar with it. So I did something I'd never done before. And instead of just posting the video on YouTube and sending Jeff the link like I would anyone else, like, hey Jeff, here's the new YouTube video. I sent it to him like as a either unlisted or private video first. So he could kind of like pre-approve it. And so I sent it to him and he's like, I don't know, man. Not sure you should post it. And then I think I sent it to my wife who was out of the country at the time. She's like, oh, it's good. You should post it. I'm like, all right. So I posted it, and then like the comments started coming in, and people were like, wow. It's like, I hope that's a good wow. I hope that means they like it. And and it kind of took on a little viral life of its own. At that point, I don't know how many views I had at that point on my channel. I think I was probably over 1 million, but like it wasn't a big thing. And then it just kind of took on a life of its own, and just it became my calling card. And I was just like, can I choose an easier calling card, please? But yeah, it became my calling card for better or for worse. And so it was the signature song. And eventually, I don't remember, like somebody on Facebook, somebody sent me a message saying, hey, I shared your cover with Luke and he really liked it. And here's his email address. Like he says, okay, if you want to reach out, or something like that happened. I can't remember exactly how we got each other's email addresses, but I exchanged emails with Luke, and he's like, hey man, I love your cover. People keep sending it to me, which is funny. And so he's like, let me know when we come to your town. I'd love to meet you and have you backstage. And so they came through Littleton, Colorado, where I live, and opening for Yes, which was super cool. And
wow.
So they did their set, and I went backstage, and I got to meet Luke, which is really awesome, and took pictures with him, and he was super nice. And then he introduced me to David Paich, and I wasn't sure if David Paich had heard my cover or was even aware of who I was. I'm like, cool, I get to meet the guy who wrote Africa and who sings the verses. Like, this is Mr. Africa. So it was a big deal to meet David Paich, but I didn't know if it meant anything to him until he started talking to me. And then I'm like, okay. He said, and this is a story I tell at my gigs before I play Africa. He said these 3 things. He said, thank you for covering my song. And as a cover artist, getting a thank you from the original artist is like the highest compliment, and so people, might not realize what that meant to me, but that was just like, oh my gosh, like, that's so cool. A song I grew up listening to, with a band that I enjoyed, I loved a lot of the music. I wasn't like the hugest Toto fan, but like what I liked, I loved. And just like, for that to circle around and like have the guy who played on it, like, anyway, it was a big deal. The guy who wrote it. And so he said, thank you for covering my song. And then he said this, he said, you sing it better than we do, which was nice of him to say, and funny. And usually gets a laugh at my concerts when I tell people he said that. And that's what he said, which is very nice of him to say. And then he said this, anytime I have anyone over to my house, I show them your cover. Yeah, that blew my mind to hear that. Yeah, that was just like, okay. So like, not only was he aware of me, he was like celebrating me to his friends, like literally. And I had no idea any of that was happening. And so I got pictures with him, and including I got to wear his hat, and then he then he threw me out a thank you or a name check on a Facebook post the next day. Littleton, you were great. It was great meeting Mike Masse, so that was super cool. And so that was like, all right, cool. And but there was a couple of moments where Africa went a little viral, and that was kind of why I decided to quit the day job. I was just like, well, if I do this full time, I think I can like replace my attorney income. I wasn't like looking to be rich and famous. I was just like, I just wanted a different day job, and so that was my goal. And so that's kind of what I did. And that was like 10 years ago. So I'm still going at it.
So let's talk about the other one, the most preferred version of Hotel California.
Most preferred version.
I mean, that's true, right? As far as the Eagles are concerned, anyway.
Oh,
Tell us
no.
that story.
Okay. No, I think you're either confusing me with something else, or no, I do. There's definitely not a most preferred version of Hotel California. Actually, Don Henley is quite unfond of covers as a general rule.
Well, that's true. Yes, he's had a couple of uncomfortable rants recently attacking those of us that play covers.
Yeah, and so I don't like. Okay,
So I don't actually have a cover of Hotel California on my channel.
Okay.
What I have
Okay.
is I have a Rick roll, or what I call a Brit roll, because it's labeled as Hotel California with a question mark, and then we play the intro to Hotel California, and then instead of going boom boom on a dark desert
Yes.
highway, instead of doing that, we go boom boom. Oh, we go sorry, rhythmically. It's like, oh baby, baby, how was I supposed to know? And we do hit me baby one more time, which is
Okay.
basically if you drop Hit Me Baby down a half step, it's the same key as Hotel California, and it's got some similar chord changes. So it like kind of works as an intro. And so it's just kind of a little trick we played on the audience, and people loved it. And like I even like had a guy like rented out a really nice expensive venue in Quebec City and invited all his friends and sold tickets and asked me to come and play for it. And he's like, I want you to play that version of Hotel California. He's like, I want you to like not play the real song. I want you to do what you just, it was just kind of funny to me that like some people appreciated it. Like, we want you to recreate that moment for us now. It's pretty funny.
Well, that's really clever. So when you have these opportunities to play outside of Littleton or outside of Colorado or outside the United States or wherever, how does that make you feel?
It's always amazing, and it's always great to walk into a room of people that are waiting to hear you play what you do. Like, just you do your thing, and they feel like they know you, and they are super friendly. I have just like the coolest audiences. I mean, I'm not just trying to like flatter them. They're just like the coolest people, and they're always so chill. I mean, sometimes I have an expression like, there's always a drunk woman. sometimes there's a drunk woman in the back who's shouting out stuff. I'm like, okay, trying to have a conversation with me. I'm like, just kind of like play it off or whatever, and people kind of like laugh. But yeah, apart from that, occasional drunk, but there's never like, everyone's super cool and super nice and super friendly, and they like tell me the sweetest things about what my music has meant to them, or they, somebody in their family was a big fan, they passed away, or just like, I just hear the sweetest stories. I do free meet and greets after every show, which is basically an opportunity for me to sell, a little bit of merch to people there and take pictures with them, and have them, get an opportunity to shake my hand and say hi if they want to. And, I'd say about a third of the crowd usually sticks around for that after the shows. A lot of people file out to, pick, babysitters or whatever. And so, yeah, it's super fun just to get to have that connection with the audience. I've had venues literally tell me, you bring in the nicest people. Like, this is, and I played this audience, like I played a venue in Dublin, and I played it a few times, and they're like, this is literally the nicest audience we've ever had. It's just like, and I'm just like, that's just a tribute to them. And it's just, I don't know. I think it's the vibe. I think it's the music I do. It's people who are chill and maybe later in life, and they're just kind of, they got their stuff together, and they're just enjoying life and enjoying music, and they just show up to my concerts, and that's the vibe. It's just like an evening of memories, and I encourage them to sing along. I'm getting way better at that than I ever used to be. Like, I'm encouraging singing along, not like overkill, like nobody wants to be singing all night or hear the room singing all night, but just like there's key moments to like sing along. It's just singing as a release, and it's like a stress release, like literally, like, because you have to exhale, to sing, and like if you exhale, like it has an automatic like relaxing effect on your body. So it's just like it's like this soothing thing to sing. And so like I want to get audiences feeling that as well, even if it's just a taste of it.
That's fantastic. I encourage all of our viewers and listeners of this podcast to go to Mike's webpage, mikemasse.com, and watch a lot of the videos. In fact, one of the main things you should be learning from this is you do need video. And if you don't have video, you need to do that. A webpage is also a wonderful thing, and we've talked about that on the podcast before. You also have, besides Ovation, you've got some other companies that have endorsed you. Do you want to talk about that briefly?
Yeah, sure. So one of my favorite things is this guy right here. Boom. This is my old version. I have a newer, fancier version that they sent me, but this is the stomp pedal I use. It says kind of, this is sort of a collector's item. It says Bigfoot. But they added, but they actually, it's not called that anymore. They had to change the name because they were trying to go international, and there was already some kind of Bigfoot out there. And so now they are Wild Dog Stomp. Wild, 2 words, Wild Dog Stomp, out of Australia. And I like that they changed it to Wild Dog because it reminds me of Africa. The wild dogs cry out in the night. And so it's kind of fun. But this is the bunyip. It's got these little jangles on the top that I have actually screwed down to the point where they're not really making much noise.
but that's kind of a nice thing to have, like if you're playing literally completely acoustically or whatever, or almost acoustically, where you'll hear a little of the jangles, but it's not necessary. If you want to get one of these stomps from Wild Dog, you don't have to get the jangles. They have a lot of cheaper, smaller ones. But
so what does this do? Is this not only the kick drum sound, but the jangle as well?
No. Okay. So, I mean, it can be a jangle, but it's timed with the kick. It's not like,
Okay.
It's not like you go. And so, like, I have a tambourine is the offbeat to this.
Okay.
I use as I pair it with a tambourine.
Okay.
So this has just a 1/4-inch jack, no battery, no no controls, and it's touch sensitive, and you just plug it in, and then you tell them to put a limiter on it because it's got like a pretty hot signal for what it is. And it sounds, and if you EQ it with a little bit of EQ love, it sounds like a really cool kick drum.
Some other folks are probably there's another device like this called a porch board that I'm familiar with. A good friend of mine up in Washington State's got one. So it's the same thing. That's how you provide your kick drum, and it's Wild Dog.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a million companies making them now, but that's the one that I gravitated towards. And I did a little tour of Australia, and while I was down there, I saw my opening act play one of those, and I was like, oh, that's super cool. And so I contacted the company, and I'm like, hey, will you send me one of those? I'm like, I'll put it in at least 3 of my music videos if you send me one for free. And they're like, sure. And they sent me one, and I put it in probably 80 videos since then, like every video it's in pretty much, because I use it all the time. And this is just a tambourine, yay, with a head on it. Sits under my foot. I put one of these little microphones, which is a Audio-Technica Pro 44, reading it backwards. It's like a little floor mic, and it comes with its own little custom, small little XLR cable, mini XLR or something like that. And I put the cable through this hole, and this just sits on the floor underneath it, and I play it with my foot. And sometimes when I'm playing it with my foot, I'll be like tipping it up with my heel and slapping it down to get like more of a hit, And so that's my feet percussion. And then I have my Roland GR55 guitar synthesizer sitting over here. I have a TC Helicon Voice Live Extreme 3, Voice Live 3 Extreme. I don't know. They actually sent that to me, kind of unsolicited. They're like, hey, we want to send this to you. I'm like, okay, thank you. And so I've used it ever since, and it's been great. I created my own patches for it, though. I don't really use any of the presets. The main thing I use it for is as a doubler. I use it as a very, very subtle, mild doubling effect, to the point that like sometimes I'm not even sure it's on, like when I'm playing. Like if I have a good monitor, I'll be able to tell it's on if I have a good monitor. And it's just like it's nice, and it just basically it gives you the effect of like I sing. One of my favorite songs to sing, if not my favorite song to sing, is "Candle in the Wind" by Elton John. And when he hits that chorus, he's singing along with himself. There's 2 of them. And there is nothing on this planet like the sound of a human singing along with themselves. It's just the sweetness you get from that, and just the smooth, it's just lovely. And the Beatles, developed it with Very Audio, where they had, they used tape effect to get a virtual double, and which is super cool. And that's kind of what I'm doing. This is a virtual double, but it's just digital instead of analog, and it's really nice. And like what I was saying on "Candle in the Wind," when he kicks in on that chorus, and it seems to me you lived your life like a candle. Like when he hits that, like that's all doubled, and I'm like, boom! I enable my doubler, and it's like butter. It's beautiful.
That's a great sound. Yes, ADT for those of us that remember that from the '60s is what that was.
Audio was it like something audio delay?
Automatic double tracking and
automatic double tracking. That's what I remember.
Yeah, and of course George Martin talked about that in the George book. Mike, this has been so much fun, and this has been a treasure trove for our viewers and listeners. And I do hope our followers will be sure and take notes, because there's a lot of great information, a lot of great intel in here. Anything else you would encourage somebody that maybe decides they want to take the leap and do a solo performing career?
Yeah. I would start with someplace like I did, where I wasn't making a lot of money. It was basically me practicing playing live. I was playing live, but it was also me practicing playing live. Low stakes, low pay, maybe a free meal, some tips. You're in a corner, cafe, whatever, restaurant. You're not really bothering anybody, and so like, and you're just practicing.
Like it's just a public rehearsal. Like, I mean, you've already got your stuff together, and you can present it with basically without any mistakes, or not, with few mistakes, but like you haven't practiced doing it in front of other people. So you just need to do that. That's the first thing you need to do. And then once you kind of like, okay, you know, I could do this in front of other people, then you start getting a little bit of your stage swagger, you know, like your little stage persona, like, okay, this is me on stage, you know, and this is who I am on stage, and you start, you know, interacting, and then like, you're like, okay, this is me as an artist, and then you kind of take it to the next level, and you're like, oh, now I have a following, you know, or whatever. I have fans, or, you know, it's not just like my friends that come. And that was a big thing for me, is like, just, you know, like you said, what's it like to go to another city and have people, you know, just for any musician to walk into a room full of strangers who are excited to hear you is amazing, right? That's just amazing, because we're used to playing for our friends and family who are like kind enough to show up to our gigs because nobody else will, you know. So like you get to the point where you're drawing in strangers, you're like, yes, thank you. You know, that's great.
It's fantastic. Once again, Mike Masse, thank you so very much. Your webpage is mikemasse.com. You've been listening to the Band of One podcast. I am Riley Wilson, and thanks for joining us for this episode. If you have ideas for future podcasts, please reach out to me, facebook.com/Band of One podcast, or simply email me, Riley@guitarmadesimpler.com. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.